Of course, that's Anthem from the Rush album Fly By Night. And we have the band in the studio right now here on Keep On Truckin'. Geddy, Alex and Neil, let me first, before I say anything else, say that to thank you very much indeed for coming to the Northeast, because there's been lots of fans of yours now for the last couple of years that just only dreamed of you actually coming over here. And I know the gig was actually just set up at the last minute, but I think they proved their enthusiasm in many ways tonight at the City Hall, one way or another.
They certainly did. It's a pleasure for us to be here. It's just a pleasure. People have treated us so nicely.
Well, there's so many things to talk about. I don't know where to start, but I think one of the most ordered ways and one of the first things to talk about is the actual style of your music in terms of your influences and the kind of mixture that you have, because there's no other band around today, I think, has such an incredible mixture of both the heavier and lighter sides of rock that your music has, and also at the same time have such really interesting storylines within the music as well. I'm particularly talking about albums like 2112, whereas apart from really giving entertainment and music, there's an interesting story which is maintained right through the album for people to get into.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to ask you, first of all, what your influences are, and some of the sources that you actually get for the topics you write about.
Well, we draw on a lot of different sources. We're influenced by a lot of other musicians, a lot of novelists, this and that. It's really hard to say. You know, we're impressed by so many things, and anything that impresses us, you know, inspires us to write. Really.
I think it's one of the things that struck everyone though when they first heard your music, when they found out you were only a three-piece band.
Mm-hmm.
The incredible sound that you actually achieve on albums, and you do the same thing on stage again. I think that's something that very few bands can do, to actually, especially three-piece bands, to actually equal and sometimes. And let's face it, I think All the World's a Stage, the dual album set, proved in many, many ways that you can actually surpass what you do in the studio on stage. Things like Bastille Day off that album, the live album, became so much more popular than the studio version, certainly in this area.
Well, it has to be a priority for a band to want to be at least as good live as you can be in the studio, and for us, we really want it to be better. I mean, we really enjoy playing live a lot, so it means a lot to us that the show be good. So we just put everything into it until it is.
Yeah, it's a constant growth pattern with us. We're not happy to sit still. You know, there's no sense in writing the same thing we've written before, and there's no sense in playing the same thing we've done so many times before. It has to improve one way or another, even if it's just subtle ways. You know, these are the things that really make it come alive for us.
Talking about changes of styles and veering off in new directions as well, I noticed an interesting comment that was made by the three of you at the end of the All the World's a Stage album, where you said it was the end of the beginning rather. Mm-hmm. Whereby you strongly suggested that on the present album, which is hopefully due for release in Britain very soon, that it was going to be a totally new style of music. Does it actually differ very much?
I wouldn't say that so much. The only reason we said that was in terms of what the goals that we had set for ourselves when we first came together. We felt that we had really achieved with 2112 as a studio album, so that we were sort of starting off on a new, a second chapter, so to speak. It won't be a big change.
Yeah, to us, chapter one was basically, working towards the creation of a sound that we could call our own. And we felt that we really achieved that with 2112. It was the first album that we could really sit down and go, this is Rush, this is no one else but Rush. And having achieved that, as Neil said, we'd like to just expand upon that and try to improve upon that basic sound and try to add more texture and make it more interesting and just continue growing the way we have in the past.
Because there was a marvellous theme as well, a story that went right throughout 2112. Have you actually included a story on the new album as well, or is it more a collection of just individual songs?
That's basically what it is, yeah. A collection of different thoughts.
That sounds even more interesting than what you've done before. But if we can stay for a moment with the album 2112, I know that it's a very complicated story, and you really need to have to listen to the entire album. And as much as I'd love to play it tonight and talk about it, we don't really have the time. But can you more or less summarise the story itself? Mm-hmm. The story that runs throughout and actually hinges around the overture in the Temples of Syrinx, which we're about to hear.
Right, it's difficult to get involved with everything that the story gets involved with, but just to sort of set the scene for that, the overture is basically the main musical themes from the whole piece, put together into more or less a conventional overture, and it sort of sets the atmosphere for the story musically. and then moves into the Temples of Syrinx, which is the first really lyrical statement, which just tells the story of the people who control this society in the future, called the priests, and the temples are actually made up of huge banks of computers which do all the direction with the direction of the priests themselves, and they take care of all the entertainment, education, working, living conditions, just everything, is controlled from this central source. And the basic story from there is one individual, our hero, rediscovers individualism basically through the electric guitar. That he discovers, and he realizes that it's possible for a person to make music that isn't made by a machine or directed by a machine, for everyone's taste. And it tells his story.
I think in many ways as well, a way of introducing the actual sequence of music is that in many ways it's a monument to the guitar in terms of the story that runs through it, and actually the guitar which you play on this sequence of music, Alex, which is absolutely astounding, and so many people have written in about it. Just let's hear the music now. I'm trucking in the studio of the band Rush. Tell me, before we get into some more music from the Caress of Steel album, I know I was just talking to you before about the actual time it takes you to record the songs, because in many ways it centres around your success story as a band, because in many ways you mirror so many different styles of music all in one particular number, and yet at the same time have the originality as well. Is there any kind of special approach you have to the building up of a song in the studio?
Well, we just, before we go into a studio, we've worked on a basic idea of how we'd like it to sound, and a lot of our recording is experimental. We'll start recording and we'll start trying to put a sound together, and as the sounds of the individual instruments come together, you sort of get a sense of how the song is going to sound, how it should sound, what should be there. And as you're working at it, you keep hearing more and more, and you're gradually sort of visualizing the finished product in your own mind and trying to put that down onto tape. And sometimes it's an easy process, rarely, but most of the time it's a pretty involved thing.
I think in many ways you must know each other's musical abilities and capabilities inside out for the kind of fine balance you have within your music, because all three of you have an equal opportunity to show exactly what your styles are within, no matter what song you choose to play from Rush. There's always, it's not even in any kind of distinct pattern, but I think that's why it pleases so many different kinds of people who appreciate both rock music and in fact every other kind of music.
Yeah, we do know each other pretty well as far as musically. Sometimes we can read each other's minds almost, but it just comes from working at it so long and playing so many gigs together that we just develop a sense of each other's playing.
It's part of the beauty too of just having three instruments or three people in the band, is that it's only three individuals. It just makes it much less confusing, and there's lots of room for each of us to do exactly what we would like to do within the framework even of a single song.
It gives you an incredible scope, because you've got your little territory. Each person has their own territory, and you're free to do pretty well anything you like as long as it remains within the confines of that territory. And it's incredible freedom on stage to do that.
A lot of people think being in a trio is really a handicap, but it's not like that at all. I know for myself, when I go into a guitar solo, it's like a solo for everybody. Everybody goes into different things, and it's really nice, and that's why, there's never that gap, that emptiness there. Because everybody is doing something.
I was just going to ask you, have you ever felt tempted to expand the band in terms of the musicians or the range of instruments in it, including orchestras and things? But coming to think of it, looking back on the albums, I don't think there's any myth of a lack of an orchestra in there. But it's absolutely amazing to think the way you can interpret and substitute four other instruments in terms especially of your guitar playing as well, Alex. That's one particular area there, whereby do you never feel tempted that you would like to express something in terms of using a big full orchestra or extend the tones? Not that it needs it.
Yeah, we have been tempted to expand our personnel just for the sake of music itself, giving us more texture, but we're too comfortable with the three people that we have. The chemistry is just too right for us. We just wouldn't want to risk it. rather than do that, we'd rather put more emphasis on ourselves, rather work harder, try to bring in other sounds. We've got double necks that we're using that give us more variety. We've got synthesizer, bass pedals, this and that. All these things we find can fill up the holes and can add extra dimension to our music without actually adding another person.
Well, I think an instance of this and a fine way of illustrating some of the obvious, incredible musical problems that you must encounter whenever you're writing songs, but they're so obviously overcome, comes from a song from Caress of Steel, Bacchus Plateau. Obviously, just repeat exactly how good the band are live, because they did release All the World's a Stage some months ago, but I think there's quite a few thousand people in the Northeast tonight know even more directly than not how good they are.
As a matter of fact, today is exactly 1 year.
1 year
Since we recorded that album. As one of our fans pointed out as we went in the hall today, it's exactly 1 year today that we first started recording All the World.
Did you by any chance celebrate that by recording this one?
No.
No. We celebrated it by not recording.
It's obviously we talked about problems and levels and sights that you set yourselves musically, but it strikes me the fact that once you've overcome those kind of problems in the studio as a three-piece band, there can't be all that many problems similarly when you come to doing this, a gig on stage. Is that more or less, do you find that the more gigs you play, you actually start changing the songs? Because you said you change a lot of the songs before you actually decide which version you're going to release.
They change, but it's seldom that you realize how much they do change. The live album, when you sat back and listened to the material after it was recorded, it was really kind of strange because it really had changed a lot, but you don't notice it because it's a day-to-day kind of thing.
Even now, some of the songs that we do from the live album still in the show have changed in many, many ways, but they're very hard to pinpoint. There are little timings, little nuances, little things.
Every one of them will have changed since that album has been recorded, though.
Do you actually have certain numbers that you enjoy playing more on stage than you would actually do on the record, for the fact that maybe they contain elements in them and chances for them whereby you can improvise as three individual musicians, for instance?
Most songs are actually more enjoyable to play live, because in the studio you're concentrating so hard that you haven't got time to have fun. But when you've been playing it for a few months, on the road, it becomes very comfortable, and generally I think you get a lot more enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, it's a shame we don't have a schedule built that we could perform all our songs before we go into studio. It's just physically impossible. The song really doesn't mature for us till we've been doing it for at least a month on the road.
Do you ever think you would ever come back to some of the older numbers if you decided that the live versions you were playing were that much different, that they were actually far superior to the recorded ones? Or do you just do you have two separate ways of looking at it? Once you've done a song on record, you forget about that particular version of it, and it becomes a new song every time you have to perform it live?
I don't think it changes that much to make that big a difference, really. I mean, the essence of the song always remains. I think that's very important, to keep it there. And to capture live the essence of what you did on record. But I think it's more interesting for the audience if you do subtly change it in different ways. It gives it a fresher feel.
Because I know you'd said on some of the sleeve notes for the All the World's Stage album that you put every amount of enthusiasm into the music that you could have on the US tour of 76, and also the feedback from the audience helped you so much. I think that's so obvious on this number now, which I know went down a storm. It's gone down a storm everywhere you play it live. Comes from All the World's Stage cue, and make comment on what a lot of people have said to me, that you must have vocal cords made of steel. I think that's the contrast's even bigger for the fact that your actual speaking voice is very, very quiet compared to the voice you actually use on stage. Do you find that you have to look after your voice and use it very, very carefully?
Well, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't really take care of it the way I should. And the reason I speak so quiet is probably because...
you speak so quiet.
I speak so quietly. But after a show especially, I'm pretty tired. My voice is very tired, so I have to sort of use it lightly. But I abuse it, I must admit. I smoke too many cigarettes and I drink too much. But what can you say?
Did you actually, when you first did you actually start to sing in that kind of high key?
It sort of developed along with the band's music, really. It was never a contrived thing. As the band's music became more high energy and more sort of fever pitch, I found I had to push it to get it through the sound of the band, and eventually it sort of developed into that kind of a sounding voice.
Because you don't actually give it a chance to actually get up in the air, because it's up in the air from the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Incredible high pitch right the way through. I think it's yet again one of the most distinguishing factors in your music, like everything else within it. There's no one else that could even begin to compare your voice to, you know.
Well, good. I'm glad you said that.
Do you? Is this kind of style of singing, is it here to stay within the band, or would you ever?
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to relax a bit more in different things. A couple of new things that we did, like for example, one tonight. There's parts of it where I try to relax my singing. I'll find it a little more musical, and I'd like to bring more variety into the sound of my voice on stage. Basically, when it needs to be, you know, strong and forceful, it's there. I know I can always count on it to be there. But I get a lot of pleasure out of singing in my regular key and singing a lot more relaxed. It's very enjoyable for me to do that.
And coming back around again to this individual style, the three of you as musicians have an incredible variety of styles, which comes out in all the songs. I'm sure that the actual future for you must be like an open book, because you could go off in so many different directions. Is there one direction you would particularly want to go off in, either play more acoustic music or more electric music? And if so, would you actually release one album full of very soft acoustic stuff, or would you perhaps even possibly release 3 albums, one of acoustic, one of the heavy stuff, and one of the extremely heavy stuff?
I don't think so. We get a lot of joy out of just combining everything that we like to do in one album. I mean, that's what really makes an entertaining album to us. We believe very strongly that an album cannot be just, 12 hard rockers. It's got to have ups and downs. It's got to be sort of like a journey almost. It's got to take you through changes. It's got to be a 45 minutes of entertainment, period. And, it's got to have these different sides. And 45 minutes of acoustic music would put me to sleep. But 45 minutes of hard rock music would give me a headache, probably.
Exactly.
It's got to be well balanced, just like your live show has to be well balanced. It's all a matter of dynamics.
I think as well, in terms of people who are just thinking about starting up as musicians and forming bands, there must be a tremendous source of influence within your music, because there's so many songs within each one of your songs, in fact, that there must be a lot of source for inspiration, in fact, for a lot of up-and-coming musicians. Do you ever find that sometimes when you've written a new song, that it's possibly a leftover or a hangover from one of the earlier songs you've done? Because there's so many little parts in each of those numbers you can catch up on and develop the melodies to become songs in themselves, even the smallest parts in some of those songs.
Oh, we've done that for sure. When we write a song, it's more like a puzzle anyway. It's just fitting the pieces together. We don't care how old the pieces are, as long as they still fit. That's what counts, if they're new or old.
It's a curious story on the 2112 album, the track called The Twilight Zone. That song, actually, the lyrics for it date back to around the time of Fly By Night. We just never got around to using the song, and we found that side 2 was going to be too short on 2112 by about 3 or 4 minutes, so we needed a song in a real hurry. So we sat down and put some music together for it, and recorded the whole. I wrote and recorded the whole song in one day. It was like an emergency. It's one of the longest lasting songs for us on the album, most satisfying ones.
Well, we must play that later on, but back now to one of these numbers, another number, in fact, from Caress of Steel, which so well illustrates the puzzle within your music, but the very beautiful result it has. This one's Bastille Day, Caress of Steel. Before we go on and play what must be, I think, appears to be anyway, a personal favourite among the three of you in terms of the songs that you've written, that's Twilight Zone from 2112. I think it would be a marvellous story, because and a very interesting story at the same time. How did the three of you manage actually to come together?
We were in a car accident. No. I'm just kidding.
Not true.
I lied. Sorry. Well, what actually happened was this. Alex and I have been playing together for almost 9 years. And it was about 5 years into the band that it was Alex, I, and John Rutsey on drums. And we got to the point where things were just about to happen for us. We were just about to go to the States, have a record deal and all that. And John showed some dissatisfaction with what we were doing, the direction we were going, and decided to leave. And there we were about a week and a half before the first American tour with no drummer. So we, on recommendation from a couple of people, this man here with the beard went to visit Neil and asked him if he'd like to come down and, try out and have a bang. So we got together, we played for a little while and talked for a long while, and decided that we'd like to give it a go. So we rehearsed for 7 days and went off to the States. And our very first gig was opening for Uriah Heep, August 16th, was it?
14th.
1974, at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena in front of 15,000 people. We'd never played together on stage before.
The first time I'd ever played with these two.
That's right.
And only 7 days rehearsal.
Yeah, 7 days rehearsal, and the first time we played in front of an audience was 15,000 people. And we were scared, to say the least. But it came off.
Most terrified.
There's another, you, Geddy, and Alex as well, you were together for a long, long time, but Neil, you must have been in a lot of bands around to be able to master music as complicated as the music of Rush in just 7 days and then go out and play a gig like that.
Yeah, actually, most of the most valuable work that I did was here in England. I lived here for a year and a half in 1971 and 72. I worked with a lot of excellent British musicians who taught me, so much. I learned so much about music from them. And I guess that experience has probably been the most valuable.